Welcome to Biff's Mystery Theater. I have many tales to tell you. Ghost stories, murder stories, and tales that will make your bones chill. Join me, won't you? For Theater of the Mind, where you always have the best seat in the house. Now close your eyes and turn off the lights.
This is Orson Welles, speaking from London. The Black Museum. Here in the grim stone structure on the Thames, which houses Scotland Yard, is a warehouse of homicide. A warehouse where a parchment lampshade, an automobile tire, a canvas tarpaulin, an umbrella, all are touched by murder. And here's a dictionary. It's a familiar object. French into English, English into French. Every high school student knows what these books are like. Word here, phrase there, merci, thank you, merci. And of course, a use common to most young men in countries not their own.
Je t'aime. Je t'aime.
Oh, you sound so passionate, Jules. What does that mean?
In the little book, one moment, je t'aime, I love you.
Well, today the dictionary can be seen in the Black Museum.
From the annals of the Criminal Investigation Department of the London Police, we bring you the dramatic stories of the crimes recorded by the objects in Scotland Yard's Gallery of Death, the Black Museum.
Here we are in the Black Museum. Scotland Yard's Museum of Murder. Not a very pleasant place, but it's interesting. Yes, here lies death. The people who conceived this place must have wished to raise a memorial to death. And here, collected under one roof, are the mementos of the murders from over 100 years. Here's a dart, a feathered dart, made for pleasure, for laughter and friendly terror. This tiny metal tip was dipped in cyanide. A twist of a wrist, flick of an elbow. The dartboard missed. The spectator was scratched. It was an accident. An accident? No, it was murder. Ah, here we are, the dictionary. You want the English for a French word? Here it is, or the French for a word in English. It's here also. Nice idea. All in one book. Great convenience. Particularly for Jules Gamache, who had a bit of trouble expressing himself to Betty Brown on the beach in southern France. One warm and sunny afternoon.
Je t'aime. Je t'aime.
Oh, you sound so passionate, Jules. What's that mean?
In the little book, one moment, je t'aime, oui, I love you.
Right, Jules. And me, a married woman?
It was. Love out of a dictionary in the summer in southern France. Of course, this was in 1923. That date's important simply because radio and broadcasting were just beginning. And Jules Gamache was something of an electrical engineer. In fact, he was the only man in a little French seaside town who was able to bring music out of the air.
Luc Gallen, how you say in anglais? The cat's whisker. So. Maintenant, mes chéris, écoutez.
Oh, Jules. That is really is music in his funny rubber earmuffs.
Huh?
Why, Jules, well, you are bright, aren't you?
I love you. I must have you now, today. Parbleu, always.
Oh, Jules.
A clever Frenchman who knew his way about with women. An Englishwoman vacationing in France. Why was she there?
Oh, Jules, if I were a better manager, if we'd be better with Ian, well, I'd never have had the breakdown. I'd never have come to France, and I'd never have met you and your... you and your wireless set.
Oh, so that was it. But all such items come to an end someday. And summer comes to an end. At least that's the correct calculation. That's the way Betty calculated. Without thinking of her, Jules.
Jules,
Oui, ma chérie?
I have to go home.
Oui. Et je viens. I come also.
Oh, Jules, that's impossible.
Now, there were the usual sighs and protestations, of course. It was just a brief interlude. Betty was a trifle saddened to let it go. After all, when a woman is crowding 40... She went home anyway to Sussex, to the Binnacle Inn, to security of sorts, and to her husband, Al.
Business hasn't been too bad while you were away, Bessie. All the rooms were let this week and the bar trade was fine.
I dare say you did all right by the
The
bar.
landlord's got to be social, girl. Otherwise his customers go somewhere else.
There's a difference, Alf, between social and drunk.
Here, now, none of that. I take a drop now and then, but I don't get drunk. Well, another customer. Business is picking up, and on the hotel side at that.
Oh,
How can I help you, sir?
I have, how you say, one moment, please. I will find the word. Oui, I have come to stay.
What do you know? A froggy. Pleased to have you, monsieur. And may I ask how you found us?
well, that is...
Monsieur Brown, the merveilleuse Madame Brown is the recommendation for your so select hotel. Is it not so that we have met in Provence, Madame?
The little Frenchman must have been mad. Mad with love. Or just a little touched in the head. In any case, he'd come just as he said, to stay. As he explained it to Al Brown.
I am, how you say, an inventor. I have much great ideas.
Yes, sure, Gamma, sure. But do you make any money?
To make money? Je ne comprends pas.
Money, shillings, francs.
Ah, oui, beaucoup d'argent. Oh, right now I wait from Canada. Much money.
And what do you invent to get all this beaucoup money?
The wireless. I am in the wireless, very much interested.
Well, monsieur, if you can get music out of the air, maybe you can get some money out of the same place to pay what you owe us.
Huh?
You've been here a month now, and we haven't seen a shilling on your board bill.
Board bill? Comment?
There was another conversation shortly thereafter on the same subject, if not exactly on the same polite level.
Look, Bessie, he's your friend. We've got to have some money.
How can I ask him for money, even if he is our friend?
Yours, not mine. He doesn't take walks with me every afternoon.
Alf Brown, are you suggesting?
I'm not suggesting, dearie. I'm telling you. Get some money out of him or out he goes. You're supposed to be the business head in this family. All right. Tend to business here.
Well, you never talked to me like this before.
It was the first time for everything, they say. For the first time, Al was in the driver's seat, and he knew it. So did Betty know it. On one of their afternoon walks, she said as much to Jules.
Jules,
Oui, ma chérie?
I suspect
He will do nothing, jamais.
he's after me
Huh?
to get money from you. What are you laughing at? I'm telling you, his Alf will be real nasty. And he throws both out. And you without a penny. Well, it's not funny. He holds the whip hand. Don't you understand?
Oui, one moment.
Oh, Jules. Not that little book again.
Oui, ça fait mon, le petit livre. Ici, I have it. like an Englishman, so... one may steal his wife, but not owe to him money.
Jules was self-confident, to say the least. He behaved as if he had a plan. He said to Al,
Never fear, mon ami. In a few days, beaucoup d'argent. You like? Oui?
to Betty, he said,
Je t'aime, ma chérie. Do not fear. All will be well.
A quiet, dull New Year's morning. The routine of the inn continued, minus the overtired, oversleeping maid. After a while, the master came grumbling down the stairs.
Bessie! Bessie, where are you?
Me. I think Mr. Gamache is dozed.
Well, let him doze in his room, then.
Pardon, monsieur? Into my chambre you wish for me to go? Oui?
Oh, no need for that. Is there, Al?
Oh, so long as he's awake, I don't care, one way or another. Where's my salt? You know I can't start a day without my salt.
I know, dear. They're where you'd expect them to be, on the mantel shelf, in their regular place.
Oh, yes, I forgot. If I may disturb you, monsieur...
Oh, but of course. The chair before the fire. Very nice, oui? Très charmant. When it is so very cold outside.
Oh, thanks. Bessie, that glass is here. Where's a tablespoon and some water?
Oh, I'll get them for you. Just a moment, dear.
Jules Gamache stood in the bay window and watched the little domestic scene. Occasionally he riffled through his ever-present dictionary as if for a word to describe the events he was watching. Such inconsequential little events. Betty came trotting back from the kitchen with a tablespoon and a pitcher of water. She put them on the table alongside the salt and glass. Al measured his own dosage, poured it into the glass. Then he poured in the water. Almost mockingly, he raised his glass as if in a toast to the Frenchman standing nearby. Then downed the contents of the glass.
Oh, those salts taste bitter this morning.
Yeah, they are never sweet, no?
Nothing sweet about them.
Then why complain, dear? You had more to drink than usual last night, so the salts taste more bitter than usual.
1 hour later.
Betty, get some help. Oh, it's the cramps. Oh, I can't stand it. It's awful.
Oh, Jewel, get the doctor. Call the cook. Do something.
I will try. My English, it is not good. No, but I will try.
Oh, my feet, they itch. Oh, they're driving me crazy. The pain, and the itching. Oh.
Shortly thereafter, Alfie Brown was quite dead. And so the tragedy reached its climax. And playing its little part in that tragedy was a certain dictionary, which, as I told you, can be seen today in the Black Museum. Dr. Westcott, the local physician, was called at once, but far too late. Alf Brown was past help. The doctor listened gravely to the story as Betty told it to him, while Jules stood by, the very picture of solicitude.
Oh, he went so quick, Doctor. And in such agony. Cramps and groans. And he said the strangest thing.
What was that, Mrs. Brown?
Well, he cried out that his feet were itching. It was almost the last thing he said.
Is that right, Mr. Gamache? Oui, monsieur le docteur, vous avez raison.
Well, if you say so, it's an interesting symptom.
peculiar one, particular poison. Though how this household will come by it, I haven't the slightest idea.
Poison? But, Doctor, it was his sauce. Although he did complain that they tasted more bitter than usual.
Anything else, Mrs. Brown?
No, nothing else. Oh, I'm so upset, confused. But what poison? How?
Itching feet, bitter taste, great pain, or do they all point to strychnine? But of course we won't be able to know for certain until there's been a post-mortem.
Oh, Doctor, why?
Why, I can't sign a certificate under these circumstances. I have to notify the coroner and the police.
Oh.
Now, I think our next precaution is for you to give me the bottle, the spoon, and the glass into my charge. Where are they?
Oh, I don't quite... Mr. Gamache, do you remember?
Je ne sais pas, madame. Je ne comprends pas.
Oh, come, Mrs. Brown. Now, pull yourself together. You want to catch the party who poisoned your husband, don't you?
Perhaps that was a better question than Dr. Westcott realized. It was pure rhetoric at that moment, as far as he was concerned. Of course, the widow wanted to catch the murderer. Still took a bit of concentrated prodding of Betty's memory until she said,
I know now, Doctor. I put them in the drawer of the kitchen table when I left Port Alfred for a moment to fetch some tea and soda. I thought it might help.
They found the bottle and the glass and the spoon in the kitchen table drawer. The doctor looked at them closely.
Someone's washed these thoroughly. There are still traces of water in the bottle and the glass. Mrs. Brown, I'm going to the police at once.
And Dr. Westcott went to the local police. The local police went to Scotland Yard. Betty Brown went to Jules Gamache.
You did it, Jules. I don't know how, but you did it.
Moi? Ma chérie, ma foi, impossible.
You did. You killed Alfred, and you stayed right there and watched him die.
Betty, you are most... how is it? Oui, you are most hysterical. You know I do not kill your Alfie. You must know this.
I know. I feel it in my bones. You killed him. Go away, Jules. Go away. I never want to see you again as long as I live.
Sadly, as if overwhelmed by the unpredictability of women, Jules Gamache packed his things and left the Binnacle Inn. But he didn't go far. Just to the next village and the next inn. There he waited and watched. Waited to hear from his beloved, now widowed, his Betty. Waited for developments in the case which the coroner's jury had labeled death at the hands of person or persons unknown. The developments were not long in coming.
My name is West, Mrs. Brown, Inspector West, Scotland Yard. My credentials.
Yes, sir.
I have a few questions, particularly concerning the disposal of the poison.
I'll try to answer them, Inspector.
Do you know who washed out the bottle and glass?
No, I'm afraid I don't. I left them in the kitchen. We were all so upset by poor Alfie's suffering. We were rather hysterical, I'm afraid.
I understand. No idea on that. I see. Tell me, Mrs. Brown, have you ever used any kind of weed killer in the garden of this inn?
No, sir. Not that I know of.
Poison for rodents, rats, mice, and so on?
No, sir. We've never been troubled by such.
Have you any idea who might have wanted to kill your husband, Mrs. Brown?
No, I haven't.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Brown. If I should...
The inspector left the front of the house, so to speak, and visited below stairs. He had a nice talk with the cook over a cup of tea.
Mrs. Davis, did you wash out the salts bottle?
No, why should I? I've got enough work. And that was New Year's Day. The maid didn't come in. I had to clean up, too. Pity, not much of a New Year in this house.
Did you notice the bottle at all?
Well, I remember saying to Mrs. Brown that there wasn't much more than a tablespoon left in it. And perhaps she better order another bottle in case Mr. Brown was getting mad if he had none.
Now, this is important, Mrs. Davis. Can you place anyone at all, in this kitchen between the time Mrs. Brown brought the bottle in here and the time Dr. Westcott took it away?
No one but the Frenchman, sir.
Mr. Gamache?
I seem to remember, sir. I wouldn't want to get him in no trouble unless he deserved it. But he did come in here and jabber at me. And then he used his little book.
Little book?
He's got a dictionary. Looks up the French and finds the English. right comical he is sometimes.
I see. Then he looked in his dictionary.
And he said bottle. He said something else. I didn't pay much attention. I just pointed at the kitchen drawer.
Did he take the bottle out of the drawer?
I wouldn't know, sir. For all I know, he just wanted to be sure it was in a safe place. I heard him open and close the drawer, that was all. Then he went out.
Did he have a chance to put it back?
Lots of chances. I was that busy running in and out.
That's too bad. Oh, excellent tea, Mrs. Davis.
The inspector was never a man to accept loose ends. He ran all his leads to earth. This is the approach which brought him finally to where Jules Gamache was staying.
Do you accuse me, Inspector?
Merely asking routine questions, Mr. Gamache. Did you have any reason to dislike or resent Mr. Brown?
None. No, but of course not.
Have you ever had any strychnine in your possession?
No, but pourquoi? Why should I?
I can't say, sir. I can only try to fill in the blank spaces. Someone, you see, gave Mr. Brown the opportunity to poison himself. That kind of gift is murder, Mr. Gamache.
Naturellement.
I'm afraid I must ask you to remain in England, sir, until the case is closed.
But for me, this will be a pleasure. I assure you, Inspector, I wish to see vengeance on this murderer. I loved Mr. Brown almost as a brother.
So there it was, a smooth, blank wall for Scotland Yard to face and search for some crack somewhere. The interest in the case simmered down. Nothing was happening. Then the newspapers picked up a lead, something so fantastic the men assigned to watch the Binnacle Inn and its neighborhood hardly believed their own ears. It seems that Jules Gamache began to write letters. And to the police.
There is one suspect who had not been questioned. A man long subject to Alfred Brown's whims and tempers. The pot washer at the inn, known to me only as Georges. I point the finger of suspicion. Observe, gentlemen of Scotland Yard, the comings and goings of Monsieur Arthur Brookfield, solicitor to Madame Brown. This man is in and out of her residence at all hours. Certainly not all of this can be on business.
Was jealousy entering the picture now? The letters aroused a good deal of attention once they leaked to the newspapers, as such things have a way of doing. Jules Gamache was quite pleased. When the reporters swarmed about him, the photographers took his picture many times, in many poses. This was fame, at last, for an impoverished inventor living on his wits.
Come in, sir. You asked to see me on the Brown case.
Yes, sir. My name is Scott, sir. I'm the owner of a chemist's shop in Woking.
Not too far from the Binnacle Inn, is it?
Just far enough to miss some of the news, but this morning I saw this newspaper.
Ah, yes, our French friend. Do you know him?
He was a customer of mine a few weeks back, just before Christmas.
Go on, Mr. Scott.
He asked for strychnine.
Oh, what excuse did he give?
Oh, something about experiments in the wireless. He kept consulting a small English-French dictionary to express himself.
The wireless, yes, that's the new excuse. Although why they should think the wireless operations entail the use of poisons is beyond me. Did you sell him any?
I did. I made him sign the poison book. The name he used was Hatch.
Mr. Scott, do you think you can identify this man among a dozen others? Well, Mr. Scott?
That's he, sir. The short fellow with the bright black eyes.
Thank you, mister.
Monsieur le chemiste. Bonjour, c'est un plaisir. How you say, one moment, please. Oui, ici. It is a pleasure that we meet again.
Jules Gamache, I have a warrant for your arrest on a charge of willful murder. I must warn you that anything you may say...
Well, that's the story. And today, the dictionary which played its part in that story can be found in its place in the Black Museum.
Orson Welles will be back with you in just a moment.
Truly a strange, impassioned little man, that Jules Gamache. He's half crazy, half sane. You wonder about him. And you know, to add to the dilemma of his personality, is one last point. While Jules was awaiting execution, he wrote another letter to Inspector West, stating that shortly after the death of Al Brown, he, Jules, saw a woman. Whether the woman was the cook or his beloved Betty, he didn't know, secrete something behind some loose bricks in the garden wall at the Binnacle Inn. Of course, the police investigated. They found 2 small jugs, one with crystalline strychnine in it, and the other with a solution of the same poison. Now, the question is, did Jules Gamache put those jugs there himself, or did one of the women? And if the latter, why did Gamache wait until just before his death to reveal this? Was it some odd form of gallantry? Well, I guess no one will ever know. And now until next time, till we meet in the same place and I tell you another story about the Black Museum, I remain as always, obediently yours.
This is WDCB FM.
This is Orson
Glen
Welles, speaking from London. The Black Museum, a repository of death. Here in the grim stone structure on the Thames, which houses Scotland Yard, is a warehouse of homicide, where everyday objects, a package of cigarettes, a length of string, a linen napkin, all are touched by murder. There's a Gladstone bag. It's a familiar object. Every railroad train carries several, inevitably useful, compact, and expandable. They always hold more than they seem. Perfect for vacations. Perfect also for...
If you look inside, Inspector, just pry the 2 halves apart at one end, as I did.
Yes, I see. Odd objects to have in a valise.
Not if one had every intention of disposing of them, Inspector.
Today, that Gladstone bag can be seen in the Black Museum.
From the annals of the Criminal Investigation Department of the London Police, we bring you the dramatic stories of the crimes recorded by the objects in Scotland Yard's Gallery of Death, the Black Museum. In just a moment, you will hear The Black Museum, starring Orson Welles. Now, The Black Museum, starring Orson Welles.
Well, here we are, in the Black Museum, Scotland Yard's mausoleum of murder. There are times, as I open this door, that I feel the old familiar inscription should be carved on the lintel. Abandon hope, all ye who enter here. Yes, abandon hope of peaceful, quiet, dreamless sleep, for within this room is almost every instrument which ever has been used for the commission of the foul deed called murder. Yes, here lies death. No doubt about it. You feel it in the dull, oppressive atmosphere. You see it first marked calmly on the neatly lettered cards. So-and-so died by this instrument at the hands of so-and-so, dated, and so forth. Your glance passes to the thing itself. You almost feel the blood. There's a camera.
So, you think
Ordinary tourist snapshot-taking camera. Yet within the blackness of this box, the film registered 2 faces. A third person saw a print. And from that recognition, 3 people died. One by a hangman's rope. There's a briar pipe, well-smoked, thoroughly discolored. A pleasure to a pipe smoker, but no pleasure to the man who inhaled hydrocyanic gas with his tobacco. Nor to the killer, trapped by the pipe itself. Here we are, the Gladstone bag. Piece of luggage for a man. It looked so commonplace, so much as if it belonged to a traveling salesman, not to Jim Hudson. Of course, in a way, Jim was a traveling salesman. He certainly had a sales talk, and he was quite successful at it.
Sally, I've never seen you looking lovelier.
Oh, Jimmy, you always do that.
What, sweetheart?
Say things like that just when I want to pick a fight with you. That's one of the reasons I love you so much, despite your wife and everything else.
Everything else?
That's what I wanted to fight with you about. We just can't go on like this, Jimmy, darling.
Why not? We're as happy as circumstances.
Don't you see, Jimmy? A woman wants at least a snatch of domesticity, not just clandestine meetings with the clock ticking away her happiness in the background.
It'll come, darling. It'll come.
The girl was right, of course, from her point of view. Granted that the relationship between her and the man she loved was, well, outside the recognized bounds. Granted that they found each other when it seemed too late. Still, the girl was right. She wanted a certain sense of security, which can come to a woman only through the small things of making coffee in the morning while a man was shaving within earshot. And Sally James was the kind of girl who took action when she wanted something badly enough.
Jim, what about the week we planned together for this spring?
I probably could get away, darling, if we had a place to go.
I have the place. Anyway, the ad about it.
You are something, aren't you?
Here, darling. I found this in the Sunday paper. Go on, read it.
For rent. Bungalow. The beaches. Pevensey Bay, Eastbourne. Reasonable by the week. You've got your heart set on this, haven't you, sweet?
Can we do it?
The week of April 12th. All right?
All right. Oh, Jimmy, it'll be heaven down there by the sea.
Heaven by the sea. Poor girl, one of those human beings who believes with all her heart that dreams can become reality. Perhaps it was just as well that Sally didn't see her Jim some 2 evenings later in a quiet little restaurant not more than 3 blocks from the place she'd given Jim her precious clippings.
Rhoda, my darling, I've never seen you looking lovelier.
Oh, come off it, Jimmy. That kind of romancing just isn't in my style.
You're a woman, aren't you?
Well, you ought to know, Jimmy boy.
And how?
Thanks.
Look, Rhoda, I've taken a cottage at Pevensey Bay.
Oh, how inconvenient to have to travel all that distance.
Not for weekends, it isn't. Inconvenient.
Well, the daring young man on the flying trapeze.
Would you like weekends by the sea, Rhoda?
Why not? Think it'd be fun. Nice place.
Called the Beaches. Old garden, private bathing beach.
Sounds marvelous.
I thought you'd like it.
Well, I can't make it this weekend.
Neither can I. How about the weekend of the 16th? We'd go down Friday afternoon, come back early Monday morning. There's a very early train.
It's a deal, Jimmy. It really is a deal.
A clever rascal, Jim Hudson, without a doubt. Knows his way with the ladies. But he cuts his margins rather close, doesn't he? Note the dates. April 12th, the week, with Sally. Friday the 16th, with Rhoda. And that's hardly a 4-week with Sally. But, of course, Sally doesn't know about this on Friday noon the 9th as she stands in the doorway of the railway carriage in Waterloo Station.
You will be down by Monday, won't you, Jimmy, dear?
Sooner than that, if I can. You know that, darling.
I guess I feel like a little girl on her first trip alone.
I'm sorry it has to be this way.
Oh, I don't mind, really. I'll have a chance to put the cottage in shape. Have it all clean and comfortable for my man.
When I saw it, there weren't any tools there. And there's always something to fix. I'd better add tools to my shopping list.
Oh, and don't forget the traveling iron I asked you for, dear. And please hurry to get down. And... Oh, kiss me. Quick, Jimmy, the train's leaving. Oh, Jimmy, dearest. Bye, darling. See you Monday.
Monday it'll be. Take care, darling. Take care.
Watch him as he walks up the platform. The train is already disappearing from the track. Jim has his hands in his pockets. He's whistling merrily, a man with nothing on his mind except his love affair and the prospect of the week ahead. He leaves the station, walks up the street a ways, pauses before a hard wish. What was it he added to his shopping list? Oh, yes, tools. He enters the shop.
May I assist you, sir?
Yes, I think you can.
What do you wish?
You've got some fine-looking knives in the window. May I see them?
Any particular blade size, sir?
I think, yes, the 10-inch carver will be about right.
Very well, sir. There we are, sir. Best Sheffield steel, hollow ground, razor sharp, and guaranteed to hold temper. It will take very little honing to keep the edge, sir.
Very efficient looking.
Do you prefer the bone or the plastic handle?
Bone, I think.
Very good, sir. Is there anything else?
I think, yes, a small cross-cut saw.
Small, about 18 inches.
Perfect.
Excellent quality, as you can hear.
Good. Would you wrap them, please?
Then that will be 6 and 4, sir. I'll just make up the slip. You'll have your package in a moment.
Jim Hudson took his package on the train with him on Monday morning. And tea time at the beaches, Bevan's Eve, promised to be exciting and wonderful.
Isn't this wonderful, Jimmy? I discovered the pastures at the top of the cliff on Sunday. Oh, Jimmy, it's paradise.
It is a nice view.
And so alone, so private. This is our private view, darling. It's like a honeymoon.
You are a sweet little thing, Sally. Very sweet.
I know. When you call me sweet, you think of me as a child. But I love you as a woman, Jimmy.
I know. Shall we go back now? It looks like it may kick up a storm.
If you want to, darling. Whatever you want.
Whatever he wants, Sally. But does he know what he wants, this man with a wife in London, you at the beaches, and still a third woman waiting to join him just 4 days from now?
It's too bad the beach isn't sand.
Oh, I don't know. Shale isn't bad. Funny about this place.
Funny? How, darling?
Do you remember the Doris Clark case?
Who was she?
She's the reason the beaches was available.
I don't understand.
She lived here. 2 men she knew came down. She was beaten, buried alive in the shale. The men hung.
How horrible.
They made a lot of mistakes, so they mightn't have been caught. People shy away from a house with that kind of a story.
I don't care. We'll change its reputation then, with our love. Let's go inside, dear. It's getting chilly with the sun gone and the storm coming up.
The storm came. The rain pounded on the roof. The wind lashed at the sea. And within the cottage called the Beaches, all was snug and warm.
I love a fire in a fireplace. Don't you, Jimmy, darling?
Yes, I suppose I do.
Oh, Jim. Am I being too sticky? Sentimental?
Trifle.
What's wrong, Jimmy? You've been, well, far away today.
Sally, let's face it. Things like this never go on for long.
Jim! Jimmy, I don't believe you said that.
I did say it. I mean it.
Then why did you bring me down here?
It was your idea. I went along with it, hoping we could work something out.
Work it out? It's past it. You never loved me.
Stop crying. I can't stand crying.
I ruined my life for you. Now you want to just forget about me.
Stop it. Grow up. You can't be infantile forever.
You want your cake and to have it too. You want your wife and other women. You won't. I won't let you.
Stop it, Sally. I told you to stop it.
Jim, no. No, I didn't mean it.
The scene was set, save for one vital piece of evidence. A black Gladstone bag, which can be seen today in the Black Museum.
In just a moment, we will continue with The Black Museum, starring Orson Welles. And now we continue with The Black Museum, starring Orson Welles.
Friday, the 16th of April, dawned fine and clear. A calm, gay Jim Hudson made his way, whistling as usual, through the weekend-bound crowds of Waterloo Station.
Well, here you are, my good man.
Glad you think I'm a good man.
Well, I think you are. By Monday morning, I'll know.
Then let's make that train, baby. Pevensey Bay on number 7.
The train to Pevensey Bay was none too fast for Jim and Rhoda. It was a fine spring day. It was a beautiful spring evening. Moonlight made the rollers on the beach gleam with a lovely phosphorescence. On the porch of the cottage, known as the Beaches.
Know something, Jimmy boy?
I know lots of things, old girl. What, for instance?
Oh, this. If I were the romantic type, this place would make me go, oh, gooey.
But you're not?
No, I'm not. All your misconceptions of women notwithstanding.
Then you want to waste all this moonlight and romance?
Oh, come, darling. If you must whisper sweet nothings, come and whisper them.
Why not out here?
Because I don't feel comfortable on the shale. Come along now.
Always let the woman have her way, particularly after she's cooked a beautiful dinner.
Here now. I'm the only beautiful thing around here this weekend.
You are, Rhoda. Wow.
What a way you have. In here, darling.
No, not in there. It's a spare room, not made up.
I want to see it.
Oh, nothing in there.
Oh, are you going to deny me anything, darling?
It's locked.
Oh, Jimmy.
No.
Say, what are you? Bluebeard or something?
Maybe I am.
The door stayed locked. The weekend at Pevensey Bay was quite successful. But now, the scene changes to a London street lined with somewhat shabby buildings which house somewhat shabby offices. Into one of those buildings, a woman hurries almost furtively. She climbs the stairs, one flight, walks into an office, door of which announces in gold lettering, Cross Detective Agency.
You are Mr. Cross?
I am. What can I do for you, Mrs.
Mrs.? My ring.
Yes, an old trick. Sit down, won't you?
Thank you. My name is Lillian Hudson, Mrs. Lillian Hudson.
I see. Well, how can I help you?
I want some information on my husband, James Hudson.
Go on, please.
I saw your advertisement. Were you formerly with Scotland Yard?
I was. Advancement seems slow. I'm working for myself now.
Yes. Well, I have reason to believe that my husband has been, seeing other women.
And you want me to get the evidence?
I think so.
A divorce action?
Perhaps. It depends on the results.
And you want to stay in the background?
For the present.
Have you anything on which I can start? An address? A lead of any kind?
I have this.
A baggage check. Waterloo Station baggage storage. Stamped 10 a.m., Friday, April 16th. An innocent bit of pasteboard.
Where did you get this, Mrs. Hudson?
I took one of my husband's suits to the cleaner. This was in a pocket. The cleaner gave it to me.
Oh, and why should this mean anything?
Because Jim, my husband, was away the entire week of the 12th until the morning of the 19th. It came to me, if he had told the truth, how could he have checked something at Waterloo on the 16th if he were out of town all that week?
An interesting observation, Mrs. Hudson. Well, suppose I go over to Waterloo Station and pick up whatever was checked there. Oh, and sorry to mention this, but it is customary to have a retainer, you know.
Private Detective Cross, once of Scotland Yard, went on over to Waterloo Station and presented the baggage check. A short while later, he arrived in the office of Inspector Henley at the yard.
Oh, yes, Cross. I remember you now.
Ah, thank you, Inspector.
You were with us once, weren't you?
Yes, sir.
There are times, Cross, when I wish I had the gumption to strike out on my own. Too late now, however.
And there are times, Inspector, when I wish I'd stayed on here. However...
Yes, to each his own, and the grass is always greener, and so on. Well, Sergeant Anderson said you wanted to show me something.
Oh, yeah, this, sir. This Gladstone bag.
Looks perfectly normal. Locked, I see.
Yes, if you look inside, Inspector, just pry the two halves apart at one end, as I did.
Yes, I see. Odd objects to have in a valise.
Not if one had every intention of disposing of them, Inspector.
You're probably right about that. Seems like some silk or something. And badly stained.
If I were a gambling man, I'd give 10 to 1 the stains are blood, sir. And it wouldn't be much of a gamble.
Any ideas on what the metal objects are?
Well, I flashed my penlight in there, sir. One is a carving knife, and the other is a carpenter's saw.
I see. How did you come into possession of this bag, Cross?
Mrs. Hudson found the check for it in her husband's pocket. She says the cleaner found it. I doubt that.
Divorce action, I assume.
Correct, sir.
I understand. Well, my suggestion is this. We'll give you another stub. Give it to Mrs. Hudson and have her place it in her husband's pocket. When he comes back for the bag, we'll have a man ready to pick him up. It seems to me this little matter bears further investigation.
So simple, so quietly effective. Just place a check for baggage in a man's pocket. When he comes to claim his Gladstone bag.
Yes, sir? Oh, here's my check. It's a brown Gladstone. Left it 3 days ago.
Just a moment, sir. Sergeant Anderson, sir?
Yes?
It's the check you've been waiting for, that fella there, whistling.
Thank you. Give him the bag. I'll speak to him.
Yes, that's my bag.
Oh, that'll be 2 and 6, sir, for overtime storage.
Oh, here we are.
Thank you, sir. Glad to oblige.
Excuse me, sir. You James Hudson?
That's right. Who are you?
Sergeant Anderson, Scotland Yard. My credentials. If you would be good enough to come with me.
What for?
Inspector Henley would like to see you. He's waiting at the police station just a block or two from the station here.
Well, I've got my bag here. Couldn't it wait tomorrow, or...
That's all right, Mr. Hudson. I'll carry your bag.
The squad room at the police station near Waterloo was very quiet. Inspector Henley sat behind a battered desk. On the desk rested the Gladstone bag, open now, and next to it a file. A familiar dossier from the Criminal Records Office.
We have your file, as you see, Hudson.
I see.
Theft, burglary, 5 years for criminal assault. Does your wife know about these things, Hudson?
No, she doesn't.
I see. Hudson, how do you account for the contents of this bag?
I was butchering half a steer for a friend of mine in the country. He has a deep freeze.
Oh, that's rather thin, Hudson. Did you wear a silk dress size 10 to butcher the steer in?
It was his wife's. I'm having it cleaned at a special place I know of.
Yes, of course. Better try again, Hudson.
There was no answer. There were no further questions. Inspector Henley knew his man. Time ticked away. The clock was quite loud. For an hour it ticked in the silence. Finally, the perspiration beginning to bead his forehead. Jim Hudson began to talk.
All right, Inspector. I'll tell you. I guess I lost my head when she flew at me.
Oh, size 10 and she flew at you, Hudson.
I told her we were through, that I was going back to my wife. She heaved the coal scuttle. Then it was at the beaches at Pevensey Bay on April 13th, sir. She grabbed the poker. I defended myself. We had a devil of a struggle. She fell, struck her head on the andiron. She was dead. I must have gone completely crazy. I went into town, but that knife and the saw, I was afraid to tell anyone. I mean, my record and...
Sergeant, I've got something here, Inspector, in this biscuit tin.
Yes, you have. Neat packing job, I must say. Not much left of the poor girl, is there? I want a check of every hardware store in the neighborhood where Hudson lives. Oh, yes, near the railway station. Got that, Sergeant? I want the sales slip on those implements and the clerk who sold them, if possible.
Yes, Inspector, I remember the incident perfectly. The fellow came in whistling, asked about the knives in the window. He bought one, then asked for a small saw. Here's the slip, sir.
Well, this says April the 9th. Hudson claims he didn't buy these things until the 13th.
It was the 9th, Inspector. I'll stake my life on that.
It's no good, Hudson. You bought that knife and that saw on Friday the 9th. You went to Pevensey Bay prepared to do exactly what you did do. If we ever had evidence of premeditation, we've got it now. You're under arrest, charged with willful murder. And I must warn you that anything you say may be used in evidence.
Each clue in its place. The case was complete. Closed as tightly as that same Gladstone bag, which can be found today in the Black Museum.
Orson Welles will be back with you in just a moment.
Speaking from London. The Black Museum. Here, in a grim stone structure on the Thames, which houses Scotland Yard, there's a warehouse of homicide. A very strange room where everyday objects, a woman's shoe, a tiny white box, a quilted robe, all are touched by murder. You take this raincoat. It's a familiar object, waterproof cloth, rayon lining, collar. You can turn up against stormy weather. Here in London, it's called a Macintosh. But you wouldn't wear this raincoat.
Odd, isn't it, Inspector? The way it was tucked around that poor woman?
And partially burned, as if someone had tried to destroy the evidence.
Well, it is evidence, sir. But against whom?
I'm not sure yet. But this raincoat, Sergeant, this raincoat will hang someone. You can depend on it.
Today, that raincoat can be seen in a very special position in that very curious room in Scotland Yard, which is known as the Black Museum.
From the annals of the Criminal Investigation Department of the London Police, we bring you the dramatic stories of the crimes recorded by the objects in Scotland Yard's Gallery of Death, the Black Museum. In just a moment, you will hear The Black Museum, starring Orson Welles. Now, The Black Museum, starring Orson Welles.
Now, here we are in the Black Museum, Scotland Yard's museum. It's a museum of murder. Here are the objects of homicide, the weapons, the clues, which at one time and another betrayed killers. They've been collected over 100 years. And now here they are, shelf upon shelf, in this dim, echoing room. Here lies death, on these shelves, in these glass cases. Just for instance, in this case, simple mallets. Just the sort of thing a suburbanite might use in his garage or his shop working at wood carving on a quiet weekend. As a matter of fact, a suburbanite did use this mallet on a quiet weekend, but not for wood carving. The raincoat. There we are. Stained, charred, too, around the edges. There's nothing you'd like to handle for very long, but there's a story attached to it. A story that begins in the kind of place you immediately associate with absolute silence. No, not a graveyard, a chess club. It is silent, isn't it? And into this silence of concentration, there intruded...
London City Chess Club.
Is Mr. Agard there?
Sorry, sir, I haven't seen him yet. This is the steward of the club. May I take a message? We're expecting him.
I see. My name is Champer. This is 46 Edison Mill East. He knows. We've had some contact by way of Agard's insurance business.
Yes, sir. And the message?
I want to see him about a policy. Tell him it's rather urgent. I want him at my house tomorrow evening at 7:30 sharp.
Very well, sir. I'll tell him as soon as he gets in. Mr. Agard, sorry to disturb you, sir.
Just a moment, steward. There. Now, your move. Now, steward.
A most important telephone message for you, sir. Came in about half an hour ago before you came in. Otherwise, I would never have disturbed you. From a Mr. Chamfer, sir.
Chamfer. Strange name. Oh, yes. Yes, perhaps I do know him. May I have the message, steward?
That was all. That was all until the next evening. A little bit after 7 o'clock on a streetcar, this quiet little insurance salesman, John Agard, said to the conductor of the streetcar,
I beg your pardon. Does this car take me to Edison Mews East? I've never been out there before, you see. I'm not...
Yes, you're all right, mister. Take you about 20 minutes from here.
Oh, thank you very much.
I'll call it out for you if you like.
Oh, yes, thank you again. Thank you very much. Oh, I beg your pardon. May I trouble you for the right time, please?
It's 7:35.
I am right for Edison Mews East, aren't I?
That one block to the car line.
Oh, thank you. I beg your pardon, Constable. Yes, sir? I am looking for a Mr. Chamfer. In Edison Mews East, I have an appointment. It's insurance. Do you happen to know the gentleman, officer?
Oh, I'm afraid not, sir.
Oh, dear. And my date was for 7:30. Is it much past that now?
7:45, sir. Steeple chimes just struck the 3/4.
Oh, thank you very much indeed. I'm sorry to have troubled you, officer.
He seemed a worried little man, John Agard, upset over his difficulty in finding Mr. Chamfer, and he was still worried, apparently, about an hour later, when his next-door neighbors, Harry and Ethel Benson, saw him coming across the scrap of lawn which separated their houses.
Here's Agard coming over. Funny.
Why is it funny, Harry? They come over very often.
That's just it. Martha isn't with him. Funny.
Such a devoted couple. Martha had a bad cold today. Perhaps John needs something.
Well, no isn't enough. There he is. Hello, Agard. Spotted you coming across the lawn.
Yes, good evening. You know, I am sorry to bother you.
No bother at all. Do you need something for Martha's cold?
Oh, you know about that. No, and yes. I suppose the cold made her forget to unbolt the doors when she went to bed.
You mean you can't get into your own house, old man?
That's it. Front and back. I can't seem to open either of them. I don't quite know what to do about it.
Not like Martha to forget a thing like that. She always bolt the door behind you when she's alone.
Oh, at night, yes. There's only the two of us. I do so rarely go out without her, but tonight it was business. If you come across with me, I'd appreciate it.
The three of them crossed the lawn to the Agard house. 3 ordinary people. An insurance agent, a bank clerk clerk's wife. The wife said,
Let me try the front door just for luck.
John Agard said,
It won't help her. I've tried several times.
The woman tried it.
That's a bit strange. I could have sworn.
It happens lots of times. The lock gets stuck. It's really open, and you think it's locked, and it just won't work.
Well, now you're here. Won't you stop in for a moment?
What with Martha's cold and all that...
She'll like to see you. Come in, please.
Well, just for a minute.
Martha? Martha, dear? The Bensons are with me. Martha!
Oh, my...
Good Lord.
She was dead. Completely, horribly dead. One look. No doctor could help. The woman's head was battered in. She lay before the fireplace, her arms and legs twisted awkwardly like some carelessly dropped wooden figure, and there was blood on the hearth, on the walls, too, on the chair, on the rugs. And tucked around the body, as you tuck a blanket around a child, was a raincoat.
Let me go over this once more, Mr. Agard.
Of course, Inspector, if you think it'll help.
Details very often help. You say you left here just before 7, took a trolley to Edison Mews, but you couldn't find the address or the man who'd called you, even asked a constable on the beat. Then you returned home to what you found.
That is correct, sir.
And your wife was alive when you left home.
Oh, of course. That was about 7:15.
The boy who delivers milk says he saw her in the kitchen through the window about that time. The newsboy says he tossed the evening paper at the front door about 6:30, but saw no one. Can you corroborate any of those points?
Oh, I took the paper with me at 7:15. Martha was alive when I left. Who could have done this, Inspector?
Who? We'll find out. We usually do. May I see the cuffs of your trousers, Mr. Agard?
The cuffs of my... Oh, yes. But whatever for?
Thank you. No? No stains of any kind?
But do you really think for 1 minute that I
We think nothing. Not yet. The raincoat, Mr. Agard, is it yours?
And are there 2 worn spots at the buttonhole?
There are.
It's nothing.
When did you see it last?
It was hanging on its usual hook in the hall.
I see. Thank you, Mr. Agard. That's about all for now.
That's about all for now. But not nearly all. The experts were at work. Somewhere, somehow, the tiny thread which would lead to the heart of the tangle would be found. In a quiet office in Scotland Yard, Inspector Mason discussed the expert's reports with Sergeant Crandall.
It couldn't have been robbery. Agard reports nothing missing.
Agard reports a lot of things, including a mysterious telephone call that took him on a wild goose chase.
During which he seems to take good care to leave a clear trail of his own movements. She was seen alive between 6:30 and 6:45. Agard was in the tobacco shop at 7:35. The girl who works there remembers him.
He probably took good care she would.
Beyond a doubt he did that. But he couldn't have battered her to death after 6:45, cleaned up, destroyed whatever he was wearing, and still be in that shop at 7:35.
Or made that trolley car a few minutes after 7.
Exactly.
Which leaves us, Inspector?
With the raincoat.
It's odd, isn't it, Inspector? The way it was tucked around that poor woman.
And partially burned, as if someone tried to destroy the evidence.
Well, it is evidence, sir. But against whom?
I'm not sure yet. But this raincoat, Sergeant, this raincoat will hang someone. You can depend on it.
That was all they had. The raincoat. Inspector Mason thought about it.
It was tucked around her just as if someone who loved her were taking care of her.
There was a thread. It seemed the only thread. Where did it lead? Where could it lead? Where could any of it lead?
John Agard, you're under arrest, and you'll be later charged with the murder of your wife, Martha. It is my duty to caution you that anything you may say...
Today, that raincoat can be seen in a very special position in that very curious room in Scotland Yard, which is known as the Black Museum.
In just a moment, we will continue with The Black Museum, starring Orson Welles. And now we continue with The Black Museum, starring Orson Welles.
Well, they charged John Agard with the murder of his wife, Martha. The evidence seems slight, pretty flimsy, but still, there were strange lapses, contradictions of character. A quiet little insurance salesman responds to a call from a possible client, and suddenly he's talkative, almost garrulous. He establishes himself at definite places, at definite times, with total strangers, all of whom can be checked quite easily by the police. The possible client is non-existent. And then, of course, there was the raincoat. From the very beginning, the prosecutor for the Crown made it clear that a great deal of his case rested on that raincoat.
And if the prisoner did commit this murder for apparently no reason, he deserves the full punishment. Much will be made of the quiet life he led with his wife. Much will be made of the fact that no telltale trace of blood was found on him or his clothing. But I say to you, and we hope to prove this to your satisfaction, that this woman could have been beaten to death by someone wearing only the raincoat which we will place in evidence. Now, who, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, could have approached Martha Agard naked save for that raincoat, except her husband, the prisoner, John Agard? Moreover, as you will see, the police officer...
There was more of the same, much more. Counsel for the Crown was out to make an impression, no doubt about that. But then, so was counsel for the defense.
My colleague has already admitted that no trace of blood was found upon my client, although from the condition of the body and though time. John Agard could never have committed this crime, performed the necessary ablutions, and been where he was definitely seen between 6:45, when his poor wife was last seen alive by a third party, and 7:05, the moment when my client spoke to the trolley conductor. But far, far more important is the relationship between my client and his poor wife, a relationship of love, of understanding, of the perfect companionship of declining years. For that reason alone, I submit my client could never have committed the crime with which he stands charged today.
So it began. The legal lines of battle were drawn. 12 honest men sat in the jury box and gave their whole attention to the parade of witnesses, to the arguments, to the cross-examinations. Sergeant Crandall gave evidence on the amount of blood and the places where it was found. Defense counsel cross-examined.
It is apparent, Sergeant, that there was an attempt to burn the raincoat, which is now in evidence. Do you agree?
Yes, sir.
Such an operation would take some time, would it not?
Well, I assume so. I can't say for certain. I've never experimented with a raincoat.
Very well. You saw the scene of the crime before it was cleaned up, did you not?
I did.
From what you saw, would you say it was possible for the killer to escape splashes of blood?
Well, I doubt it.
He would get blood on his legs, his hands, his face, his hair.
I expect so.
Were any such traces found on my client?
Well, none that I know of.
There's been a suggestion made that the murderer took a bath before leaving the premises. Did you see any traces of a bath? A wet towel, indications in the bathtub?
No, sir. Nothing like that.
One more point, Sergeant.
These were the telling points. But the Crown made its own points as well.
Inspector Mason, was your reaction of the defendant when you first questioned him?
I was rather surprised at him. He showed less emotion than I did.
How was this indicated?
We sat in the room where the murder had occurred. Mr. Agard smoked and talked. He held his cat on his knees and stroked it quite calmly. At one point, he casually stepped...
Such points do... A clever prosecutor. Quite clever. He called the steward of the chess club.
Was Mr. Agard in the club when the telephone call came from this mysterious Mr. Champa?
No, sir. I looked particularly. He was not there.
Did you recognize this Champa's voice?
I'd never heard it before. I haven't heard it since.
Might it have been a disguised voice?
It might. It sounded muffled. Very heavy, sort of.
Thank you. Your witness.
Steward, in your observations of Mr. Agard, have you ever seen him behave as a poor loser?
No, sir, never.
Has he ever expressed violent opinions, to your knowledge?
Mr. Agard violent? He's the quietest man I've ever known.
Did he ever mention his wife to you?
Many times, sir.
On what occasions?
Usually about 9 in the evening. He always worried about leaving her alone too late at night, sir. Oh, very considerate of her he is, was, sir.
Thank you, that's all.
There it was, all they had. An elusive case. An impression, really, more than a case. Very difficult to prove, but just as difficult to defend. For instance, the evidence of Harry Benson, who was with John Agard when the body was discovered.
And in all the years you've been neighbors, what would you say impressed you most about my client's relationship with his wife?
His absolute devotion. Never a quarrel, never a raised voice. They liked the same things. They were perfect for each other.
Your witness?
Mr. Benson, after the discovery, who called the police?
Why, Agard did, come to think of it. My wife was very upset. She was sick over what she'd seen, as a matter of fact. Yes, he was the one who thought of the police. He used the telephone quite calmly.
Quite calmly. Thank you, Mr. Benson.
And naturally, the defense brought John Agard's immediate superior to the stand, the manager of the local branch of the insurance company Agard represented. This man's testimony was double-edged. On direct examination, he stated,
We have always had complete faith in Mr. Agard's integrity and character. He carried a large policy on his own life in favor of his wife. She was not insured. To the best of our knowledge, which is rather complete, Mr. Agard has never been in financial trouble in his life.
On cross-examination, he explained,
Yes, I live near Edison Mews East. Mr. Agard has been to my house many times. He knows the way very well. I cannot imagine why he asked for directions. I was at the cinema that evening. My neighbor recognized Mr. Agard when he came to the door of my house. Unfortunately, I was not at home.
When John Agard's turn came to take the witness stand, there was little left for him to say.
I did not kill her. I had no reason to. I loved her.
Opposing counsel summed up. The judge made his charge to the jury.
Again and again, you have heard the importance of the time element in this case. Could this man, or any man, have committed this crime, removed all traces of it from his person, dressed and been at a trolley car line 20 minutes from his house, in the time between the moment the milk boy saw the victim alive and the moment the conductor saw the defendant on the trolley car? More, there is no evidence to connect the defendant directly with the crime. The case is entirely circumstantial. No motive has been established. I could only...
They listened. The 12 honest men in the jury box. They retired and they debated. What went on in that jury room is sealed in silence under the honored tradition of the law. Anyway, 40 minutes elapsed. Then the jury re-entered the courtroom. The clerk asked the usual question. Are you agreed upon a verdict?
We are.
Do you find the prisoner guilty or not guilty?
Guilty. Prisoner at the bar, have you anything to say why you should not die according to the law?
I am not guilty. I have nothing else to say.
You're looking well, John.
They treat me well. I had a shock yesterday. The governor of the prison came here. He said 8 o'clock in the morning, Monday the 16th.
Don't worry, John. It will be put over.
The appeal?
It's being studied. The court won't rule for another month at least. They'll grant a stay of execution.
A month. Another month.
A month. An extra week after that. Time went on endlessly, it seemed, to John Agard, waiting in his cell in Walton Prison. And at long last, they gave him his own clothes and took him before 3 judges of the Court of the Criminal Appeal. Handcuffed, he stood there between the bailiff and his own counsel. The voice of the judge seemed very far away.
There is indeed reasonable doubt in this case. We believe there is eminent difficulty and doubt. The case against the appellant was not proved with the certainty necessary to a verdict of guilty. This appeal will be allowed. The prisoner will go free.
Yes, he went free. But the raincoat, that famous raincoat, can still be found today in its place of very particular honor in that curious room known as the Black Museum.
Orson Welles will be back with you in just a moment. Now here in person is Orson Welles.
So, Inspector Mason was wrong, wasn't he? The raincoat didn't hang anybody after all. John Agard went free, and for the first time in the history of English law, a conviction for murder was set aside for reasonable doubt. Now, what happened to John Agard? He lived out his life. Just 2 years after his release, he died. Some say of loneliness in Liverpool, a broken, weary old man. I've seen his grave in Liverpool. And I've seen the raincoat. That famous, enigmatic raincoat. In its place of particular honor. In that strange room in Scotland Yard. Known as the Black Museum. Now, until we meet again in the same place for another story of the same kind, I remain as always obediently yours.
The Black Museum, starring Orson Welles, is presented by arrangement with Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer Radio Attractions. The program is written by Ara Marion, with original music composed and conducted by Sidney Torch. Produced by Harry Allen Towers.